How's it going? John Connearn here, and today what we're doing is checking out how you would use the new V4 range of amps from Victory alongside the Quad Cortex by Neural DSP. Now, if you don't own a Quad Cortex, that's not a problem, because the routing options that we're going to go through today can be applied to most modern digital units, and the method that we're going to use today is the 4-cable method. Now, the 4-cable method has been around for quite a while, but in this particular setup, it allows you to get that valve touch and response and sound feel from the V4, but also the flexibility and just the multitude of options that digital kit can give you nowadays. And don't be put off at all that there's 4 cables involved. It's actually a really simple process, and I'm going to go through that now and try and illuminate just how easy this is to do. Okay, in this view you can see the Quad Cortex patch that I'm running through today, and as we're using the 4-cable method with one of the V4 amp range, in this case the jack, I've called this patch V4 cable method, pun intended there obviously, but you can search for this on the Cortex cloud, and I've put it on the Cortex cloud so that you can download it and integrate it into your rig with whatever you want. Of course you can use a jack, but anything with an effects loop, any amp, you can use this patch with. And my profile is John Connearn, one word, and this should be there for you to try out. And in terms of what's in the signal chain here, we start off first on the far left with a noise gate. Then after that, we've got compressor, chorus, 2 drives of differing amounts of gain and character. Then obviously the effects loop 1, which sends it to the jack and routes all that. Then at the bottom, we have vibrato, we have a delay, a freeze, and then a modulated reverb as well. And these are all set up so that you can control them with the 8-foot switches on the Quad Cortex. Now, in terms of the 4-cable method, the first cable goes from your instrument into input 1 of the QC. Then it's going to go through all of these blocks before the jack, and then where this effects loop block comes in is that it then goes out of send 1, that's this blue lead that goes into the input of the jack. So that's 2 cables so far. Then it will go through the jack, and you can tweak the preamp section, and then it will go out of the send of the jack, which is this red lead, which goes back into the return 1 of the QC. And that's where it will go onto this bottom row and go through all of these blocks that are the post effects, like your delays and reverbs. So we've used 3 of the 4 cables so far, and for the 4th cable, we're going out of the multi-out of the Quad Cortex, and here I'm using output 3, and that's this purple cable, and then that is going into the return of the jack. Now, one of the new features of this V4 range is that they have the cab sim feature. So for this demo, I'm just keeping it on preset 1, but it now allows you to have an XLR out to go direct in. So if you're using this live, you could of course go out of the cabs, because this can power cabs too, but then as another option, or alternatively when you're recording, you could go direct out via the XLR with the cab sim engaged to then record, go into front of house, etc. And for the sake of this demo, what you're hearing is the cab sim out going via XLR into my interface, into Logic. Now, by nature of this demo, it can seem a bit cable intense up here, but the common way to do this is to put them in a loom. So essentially it's a single strand of cable with them all tied together, and then you can have them just going between the 2 units if you're going across a stage, for example. Now that we've gone through the signal chain using both of these units, you can see why this 4-cable method can get around the practicalities of using a preamp stage and effects and getting them all in the right order. And I say in the right order, it's not like there's a right and wrong with tone, but there are just practices that are more common. So it's very uncommon usually for people to put reverbs into a distorted amp. And using this 4-cable method, you can get around that really easily. So that's the rationale for it anyway. So now let's just go through a few sounds, changing effects on the Quad Cortex, changing the parameters on the jack, so you can get an idea of how they work together and how they sound. All right, so the first sound, we're on channel 1 of the jack. I've ran everything completely flat, bass, middle and treble all at noon, no reverb, and the volume for channel 1 is set at noon as well. So here's how that sounds. Matter of fact, clean sound there. So first, I'm then just going to bring in the reverb so you get a taste of how that sounds. Okay, so now let's bring in a drive. So I'm going to engage this drive, which is the myth drive on the Quad Cortex. Here we go. Yeah, feels great. Cool. Let's add in now on the Quad Cortex some delay. Let's bring in some reverb. Okay, now let's try drive in the jack a little harder. So now I'm just turning up volume 1 of the jack. And then I'm also going to turn down the sim level just to compensate a bit, because that'll be a bit higher in volume. Cool, let's play around with the EQ. And just as a reminder, I'm on sim preset 1 here, designed by the amazing Jack Gardner, all of these on the jack. And I'm just getting along with number 1 the best. And again, I've sort of set this up how I would in a gig. So I'd probably go out of the cab, but then this would be the DI signal that you're hearing. So it'd be coming out of the XLR out, and you'd be hearing this out the front of house or into an interface, for example. So let's change the EQ a bit. Let's bring mids back and bass, because the jack's got a ton of bass as well. So let's just see how that sounds. And I'm actually gonna disengage the drive, bring in chorus. So what I'm going to try now is engaging a different drive character altogether to give channel 1 a more higher gain sound and see how it goes. Because obviously channel 2 on the jack can do higher gain sounds, but you can also implement a drive of a higher gain nature in the Quad Cortex to get more out of a clean channel. So here we go. Let's disengage those and bring in this second drive, which is the rodent drive on the QC. Here we go. And what I'm also going to do is bring back the sim level, because it might be a bit louder, take the reverb off, bring treble down a bit, bring the mids and bass back to noon. And then also take the chorus off as well. Here we go. Cool, let's bring in some wet effects, delay and reverb, also chorus. Let's try and get a sort of lead sound. Again, I'm pushing channel 1 pretty high. It's sort of 3 PM. So here we go. And just whilst we're here, let's try and get a really chimey sound. So actually, leave the chorus on, bring in the vibrato here, and then on the jack, let's bring reverb all the way up, and the treble quite healthily. Mids, bring back, same as the bass. Here we go. All right, let's go over to channel 2. So let's keep everything stock. Let's take everything off. Onto channel 2 on the jack. Now, here's how it sounds with everything at noon and the reverb dialed back. Volume for channel 2 is at noon as well. Okay, so let's bring back some mids and some bass. Let's add some treble and also add some reverb as well. Okay, let's really dime it. Let's bring in loads of volume too. then let's also bring in some treble, bring back the bass. Let's get a really aggressive, distorted sound now. So less mids, more treble. And let's add some verb, why not? Okay, let's now bring in some delay and reverb. Whilst we're going through some sounds now, I thought it would be a good opportunity to show here how you can use the IRs that are within the QC as an alternative way of routing all this. So as you can see now on this patch, after the effects loop 1, I've put in a cab block. And here you can see all the settings for that. It's a 412 style cab. And what this is doing is this is having all of the preamp signal from the jack going into an IR within the QC. And then, as usual, thanks to the 4-cable method, through all of the effects blocks that it was going through before. And now the only difference is that I'm going out of the QC via the XLR as opposed to going through the jack XLR. And that's it. So now the difference is that you can process the IRs and use the IRs within the Quad Cortex. So here's a few examples of that. As you could see in here through the demonstrations, this kind of setup can allow you to have almost the best of both worlds when it comes to the tube amp and digital world, because the V4 can act as that really strong, tube amp backbone to your sound that's really desirable. And then the QC can act as the effects processor and have all those creative possibilities of effects and parameters going on at the same time. So it is a hybrid rig of sorts, but it can definitely lead to some creative places if you want to go there. And just as another note, I was using the jack from the V4 range by Victory, but there are a ton of others that do their own thing and sort of have different applications. Even though each one is, super flexible, they do have certain characteristics that may be desirable to you. So if you want to go and check them out and see which one's best for you, head on over to Victory Amps and see the full range for yourself. And then finally, thanks for watching. I've been John Connearn. See you in the next one.